A ring of the bell. Toby had been welcomed warmly on Thomas's branch line. He loved chuffing through the village, cheerfully ringing his bell as people waved. The villagers were quite taken with their new tram engine, much to Thomas's charm. One evening, Toby was bringing the workmen home from the quarry. The trucks loaded with stone rattled behind them. They had just left the quarry and were crossing the road when they heard an awful screech. Toby stopped with the trucks blocking the road. The driver and guard went along the train looking for the problem. "One of the truck's brakes slipped on, Toby," the driver explained. "It must have been loose, won't take long to fix." Toby sat patiently as the crew tended to the truck. Suddenly, he saw something up the road. The constable, who had given Thomas trouble, came speeding towards him on a bicycle. "And what's going on here?" demanded the constable. Trouble with the wagon brakes, sir," Toby explained. "Won't be long until we're on our way." "This won't do," grumbled the constable. "You are blocking a busy public road." Toby glanced up and down the road. There wasn't a car in sight. It doesn't look very busy at the moment, sir," Toby remarked innocently. "Don't get smart with me," snapped the constable. "You engines are nothing but lawbreakers." He scribbled fiercely in his notebook, stormed back to the guard, thrusted a ticket towards him, and rode off in a huff. "Obstruction of traffic," the guard cried. "Nonsense!" When the truck's brakes had been fixed, Toby set off quite dumbfounded. "I don't understand," Toby said to Thomas that night. "There wasn't a car to be seen. I think that constable has it out for us. Sir Topham Hatt won't be happy about the ticket." Thomas snorted. "Perhaps you're not the solution he thought you'd be after all." Thomas shut his eyes and promptly went to sleep. Toby chuckled and followed suit. The next day, Toby was heading along the farm lane with some trucks. He was still cross over what had happened, and the trucks knew they had best behave themselves. As he came up the lane, he could see the constable on his bicycle. Toby was just making his way through the town when a car shot out in front of him. "Ooh!" Toby cried. "Look out!" The constable hadn't heard the car, but it was heading right towards him. Without hesitation, Toby rang his bell loudly. The constable heard that. He fell off his bicycle onto the sidewalk just in time to avoid the car. It sped off down the road and disappeared. Toby halted near the constable, who sat bewildered. Are you all right, sir?" he asked. "And just what do you think you're playing at?" demanded the constable, rubbing his back. But the car—" "Stow it!" barked the constable. "I'll be reporting you for this, mark my words." Before Toby could reply, Percy the bus came roaring up. "Toby, are you all right? That car didn't hit you, did it?" "No, Bertie, I'm just fine. Thank goodness, he gave my passengers a good fright. That was some quick thinking on your part." "What's this?" demanded the constable. "You're in cahoots with this engine?" The driver and passengers stormed out of Bertie and marched up to the constable. "Look here," fumed the driver. "Toby's a hero. If it weren't for him, you'd be in a sorry state, let me tell you. Now will you stop pestering Toby and try catching the real criminal?" The passengers, continuing to scowl at the constable, mumbled in agreement. Well, he stammered. "I couldn't have put it better myself." Everyone turned to see Sir Topham Hatt and the Chief of Police. "First," Sir Topham Hatt began, "you disrupt the work of my engines. Now you pin the blame of someone else's actions on them. I must say, Constable, your actions don't leave me with much faith in the police." "I assure you, Sir Topham," grumbled the Chief, "we'll be taking action to ensure this never happens again." He motioned angrily for the constable to follow him. Sorry," he stammered, before silently walking after the Chief. "I don't think you'll have any further issues with him," Sir Topham Hatt chuckled, winking at Toby. Toby had never been so relieved. That night, Toby backed into the sheds to find Thomas smiling. "Well done, Toby," he chuckled. "Oh, nothing to it," Toby said modestly. "You've got to look out for people on your line, no matter their behaviour." "Not that," Thomas replied. "I mean the constable. You should have seen how he jumped when you rang your bell. Not so tough after all, I suppose." Toby smiled. It certainly hadn't been done for a laugh, but he couldn't help feeling that, by saving the constable, he'd made a friend of Thomas. Percy's Pancakes. It was a peaceful morning on the island of Sodor, and the engines were being fired up for a busy day, all except Percy, who was feeling tired. "Good morning, Percy," peeped Thomas. "What's good about it?" replied Percy. Percy was tired. He'd arrived back very late with the post train, and he was exhausted. Just then, the fat controller arrived. "Good morning, everybody," he said. "Percy, today I need you to go to the yard and collect a very important train to take to Farquhar." "Yes, sir," Percy replied. When Percy arrived at the yard, he found a train full of eggs, flour, milk, and a strange mixture. "What's all this?" Percy asked his driver. "It's Pancake Day," his driver replied. "Sir Topham Hatt is having a big celebration for everyone at Farquhar to celebrate the event." Percy wasn't too sure what a pancake was, but he was very excited to see the celebration. Percy was coupled up to the trucks and soon left the yard. On his way, he passed Mrs. Kindly's cottage. She waved as she saw him approach. "Perhaps she'd like to join us for the celebration," Percy said to his driver. "What an excellent idea, Percy. Let's ask her now." Both Percy and his driver asked Mrs. Kindly if she wanted to join them on their journey, and she was thrilled. "Oh, I'd love to," she exclaimed. "Let me grab some drinks to add to the celebration." When she returned, she hopped into Percy's brake van with the guard, and Percy set off once again. Soon, Percy arrived at Farquhar to find everybody was already there waiting for him. Mrs. Kindly was delighted, and soon everyone gathered round the station. "What a strange event," Percy remarked. "I've never seen people come together to eat food." "I guess it shows that sometimes the smallest of things can bring people together," Thomas replied. Just then, the fat controller made an announcement. "For my next trick," he said, "I shall flip this pancake straight into the air and back into my pan." And before anyone could say anything, the pancake flew into the air and landed straight onto Percy's funnel. There was a silence until Percy spoke. "Well, bless me," he said. "I knew I was to bring the ingredients, but I didn't realise I was part of the mixture." And with that, everyone laughed at Percy's pancake. Gordon shows the world. One morning, Gordon was resting in the yard. He was due to have a busy day and was waiting for the cleaner to arrive. Just then, Wiley arrived. He was a young man who found the engines fascinating. His job was to clean them before and after a busy day. "Hello, Gordon. Ready for a busy day?" said Wiley. "I am indeed, young Wiley," Gordon replied. "Do you know how hard it is to be such a large and splendid engine? Storming through stations, everyone's attention turned to you. It is nice, don't get me wrong, but sometimes I do just like the silence." "I can only imagine," Wiley put in. "I'd love for everyone to see me on the footplate of an engine coming into the station." "Then why don't you?" Gordon asked. "Well, I'm just a cleaner, Gordon. I'm no engine driver. Anyway, you're all scrubbed up. You'll be looking great for all those passengers. I have to go and clean Henry now." And with that, Wiley left. Gordon thought for a moment until his driver and fireman arrived. "All right, Gordon, let's go." But Gordon had a plan, and he spoke to both his driver and fireman about it. The next morning, Gordon came into the yard to find Wiley cleaning James. "Make sure my red paint is looking splendid for my passenger train today, Wiley. I can't have the passengers seeing a dirty engine." "Of course, James. You're all finished," Wiley replied. "Off you go to work now." "Excuse me, Wiley," Gordon asked. "Would you mind coming over here?" "Of course, Gordon. Don't need cleaning again, do you?" said Wiley. "No, not at all. A little soot doesn't bother me," Gordon remarked. "I have a proposition for you." "Oh, what's that?" "How would you like to ride in my cab today? I've spoken to my driver and fireman, and your manager has agreed." "Oh, Gordon, you'd do that for me?" "Of course I would," Gordon replied. "And in the most important engine on Sodor, you'll definitely have heads turning your way. Now come on in, we haven't got much time till our first train." When Gordon and Wiley arrived at the station, the coaches were already there. passengers turned to see the big blue engine back down. With everyone's heads turned towards him, Wiley had never been more excited. A cleaner who worked with Wiley noticed him on the platform and came up to the cab. "You've certainly made your way up the ranks," he said. "I wanted to see the world," Wiley replied. "And so you shall," Gordon said to himself. He couldn't help but feel happy. Gordon realised that sometimes benefiting others is better than boasting about yourself.